In Java, often you would need to compare two different variables. Maybe you are comparing two different strings, maybe you are comparing two different integers. Usually when we are comparing two different variables, we use a double equal sign. But there are situations where that can lead to wrong results. Let me show you. So here, let's suppose I have two integers that are in integer wrapper class. Let's say it's integer a is equal to 127 and integer b as 127. Now, if I do a print of their comparison of a equals b, let's see what happens. See, the output is true, which is what you would expect, right? A and b both have 127 as their value, so the output comes as true. No surprises there. But watch what happens if I just change the value of a as 128 and the value of b as 128. The values are still the same, but see what happens when I run it. You see, the output becomes false. Well, why is that? The reason why this happens is because when you use the integer wrapper class instead of the primitive int, what happens is Java internally creates a cache, an integer cache, where values up to 0 to 127 are stored. When you had your integer a and integer b both of the value 127, they actually pointed to the same object in the memory. They just were referenced by the two variables integer a and integer b. But the integer cache can only support up to 127 value. The moment you go one step higher and assign the values 128 to a and b, Java creates two separate integer objects and they hold the value of 128 each. Now the double equal sign only compares objects. If the two objects are the same thing, only then this operation gives you a true output. In other cases, it gives you a false output. And I can prove that to you. If I make the value of a as 127 and b as 127, I print out their identifiers because you cannot directly see the memory address where they are stored, but you can see a unique identifier to figure out whether two objects are the same thing or if they are different. So if I write system out and I say system dot identity hash code a, it will give you the hash code of the object a, and then I will give you the hash code object of b as well. When I run it, you will see the value of a and b are exactly the same. That means internally both a and b, they both point to the same object. But watch what happens if I do the same thing with value 128. So here, let's say I create integer c and d and I put their values as 128, and then I try to get identifiers of c and d. And now let's run it. So you see, for a and b, the IDs are the same, but for c and d, the IDs are different. That is why when you do a double equals comparison on c and d, the value would be false. So what do you do in this case? Well, you use the dot equals operator. Let me show you. So here, usually if you do c equal to d, it will give you false. But instead, if you do c dot equals d, see what happens. So when you did c and d, since c and d are different objects, the output was false. But when you did c equals d, it actually went ahead and checked the values of c and d. That is why the output came as true. That is why you should always use dot equals when you are comparing the contents of the object, and only use double equals when you are using the primitives. Hope that helps.